This is NBC News at this hour.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Middaugh, and these are the stories making news at this hour. People who knew and loved John Denver, as well as fans who never met him, gathered for a second memorial service in the folk singer's honor, this time in Aspen, Colorado. The singer was killed last Sunday when his single-engine plane crashed off the California coast. And thousands gathered today at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia for the dedication of a memorial honoring women in the military. The main structure is a semicircular retaining wall, about 30 feet high, and including a reflecting pool. Vice President Al Gore says it's a way of saying thank you to all the women who have served and those who will in the future. The chairman of and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company died today of lung cancer. Roberto Goizueta had been a heavy smoker. The Cuban-born business leader helped the soda giant skyrocket in value. Former President Jimmy Carter says he exemplified the American dream.
I think perhaps more than any other business leader, he epitomizes the consummation of the American dream. Coming from Cuba to this country, he was instilled with the courage of an immigrant to seek greater things, to seek freedom. And he rose to the top of a Coca-Cola Company.
Roberto Goizueta was 65 years old. The Northeast may be facing a shutdown of rail service if Amtrak workers carry out their threat to strike. Company officials and the union representing 2,300 of the rail line's maintenance workers are trying to reach a deal before Wednesday's strike deadline. Negotiations focus on pay increases and adjustments in work rules. And those are the latest headlines from NBC News and MSNBC. I'm Gabrielle Middaugh. Despite a written request from the landlord not to write on the walls here in the entrance, several well-wishers have come and written their words of support. This one says, "Amadou, we all love you, brother, especially you." For Columbia News Tonight, I'm Gabrielle Middaugh in the Bronx. According to the New York Convention and Visitors Bureau, last year a record 33 million visitors took in New York sights and spent nearly $14 billion. No representatives from the city's Department of Environmental Conservation attended today's hearings, nor was anyone available for comment from the Department of Sanitation. For Columbia News, this is Gabrielle Middaugh. There are a couple things you can do to protect your computer from the Melissa virus. You can either buy an antivirus software like this one from Symantec, or you can go to the manufacturer's website and download a quick fix. According to the last report by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, complaints against police officers increased between 1997 and 98 by 20%.
Justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! What do we want?
Protesters have been coming to the Bronx courthouse for a prayer vigil every week since Amadou Diallo's death. Today, they thought their prayers might be answered. But despite leaks to the press about second-degree murder indictments against the four officers, there's still no official word. Much of the protest was directed against Mayor Giuliani.
And I want him to know that for as long as it takes until we get these officers off the street, till they're suspended, till they're arrested, till they're convicted, we will be out here and continue to be out here for as long as it takes.
Officers stood watch over today's crowd of demonstrators and kept them confined within police barricades. Below, the protesters criticized police tactics.
You know, they jump out on us like, you know, we have no rights, and they stop us anywhere they want to and frisk us, go in our pockets, and violate our rights.
Diallo was killed at his Bronx home when 4 police officers shot 42 bullets at him. 2 months later, flowers litter the front walk and posted signs express outrage toward the officers. No protesters here, just visitors who've come to see what has become the famous site of a murder. Despite a written request from the landlord not to write on the walls here in the entrance, several well-wishers have come and written their words of support. This one says, "Amadou, we all love you, brother, especially you." For Columbia News Tonight, I'm Gabrielle Middaugh in the Bronx. Sightseeing bus tours are popular for visitors. Some tour companies send out a bus every 15 minutes. But in neighborhoods like Greenwich Village, residents find them a nuisance.
They are constantly going down our street. It's like living in a zoo.
When the tour buses sit around and have the smog come into my window, it gets rather frustrating.
One morning I stood up from bed, and there was a tour bus with a lot of Japanese people looking into my bedroom.
It's just a horrific amount of sound and noise, and you can't focus, you can't hear yourself, you can't talk on the phone.
Faranz Mansouri lives in a second-floor apartment on Bleecker Street. Because she works at home, she says she often finds herself eye-to-eye with tourists peering in her windows.
And what, am I going to sit in the dark because the buses are going by? This is all day.
Mansouri says the noise gets so bad, it even bothers her dog.
It's hard. It's really hard. You have to close the window.
City officials like Andrew Berman agree there's a problem. As chief of staff for Councilman Tom Duane, he supports the proposed bill to keep tour buses off narrow residential side streets. Berman says regulation is in the best interest of the city and the tour companies.
It will allow the neighborhoods to prosper from the influx of tourism without having their quality of life denigrated by it.
Berman says pollution is a major problem, especially from the double-decker buses.
A lot of these vehicles are old, surplus or out-of-date vehicles from England.
New York Apple Tours, one of the city's largest tour bus companies, declined to speak with us on camera.
Are you leaving?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
When we showed up at their headquarters, they said they had no comment. But a representative from Gray Line, another large tour bus company, did speak with us.
As far as our buses are concerned, we bring our buses up to the current Department of Transportation standards.
According to the New York Convention and Visitors Bureau, last year a record 33 million visitors took in New York sites and spent nearly $14 billion. Squashing tourism isn't the goal of the bill in City Council, but it aims to keep double-decker buses on broad thoroughfares. Mansouri would be just as happy restricting the frequency of buses and their hours of operation.
And I don't think it should be every 15 minutes, and I don't think it should be all day long.
Her neighbors agree.
I'm exhausted. Too many people, too many buses, too much everything. It's overload.
Gabrielle Middaugh and Kimberly Gadula for Columbia News.
This is the great commercial area. The hardest cities to be here. Until after Civil War, it got sent.
Each year, 11 million tons of garbage goes to low-income neighborhoods like this one in Upper Manhattan. Waste facilities sometimes overshadow precious park space. Assemblyman Richard Brodsky says it's time to take action.
We're at a turning point. If we must move beyond an expression of concern into a remedy that will affect the lives of people who have been powerless and affected wrongly.
Brodsky has introduced Bill 961A, which would require the Department of Environmental Conservation to change the way it gives out permits, and will force waste facilities operating in minority and low-income communities to give something back to the neighborhood. Hearings began this morning to examine the impact of waste on these communities.
Regardless of income, it is people of color who are the ones who are most affected by the pollution.
For those testifying, waste management is a civil rights issue. Lisa Lowe is executive director of the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance.
So these communities are trying desperately to turn themselves around, and they are on the comeback trail, and yet, unfortunately, government keeps sinking them under the weight of more and more polluting facilities.
No representatives from the city's Department of Environmental Conservation attended today's hearings, nor was anyone available for comment from the Department of Sanitation. For Columbia News, this is Gabrielle Middaugh.
Appreciation sweetens labor.
Reverend Betty Neal says it's unfair to let a few bad officers speak for the whole force.
Cops are human beings, and people must learn to know this. They panic like us. The only thing is, when they panic, somebody could get hurt.
Though she's not herself an ordained minister, she founded Ministers of Harlem USA, Incorporated. She calls herself a street preacher, and from her borrowed pulpit today, she preached encouragement for police officers. Her group presented its annual awards at the 28th Police Precinct. 3 police officers were honored, along with 3 firefighters and 5 others from the community. At City Hall, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani addressed the diversity issue while announcing plans to bump up police department recruitment.
The purpose of it is to have a police department that, to the extent that we can, is the best, reaches everyone, is the most representative that it can be, without sacrificing any issues of quality or training.
Officer Leon Flowers says diversity among police officers can only help.
So you just need really good officers who can come, who can identify the people who doesn't hurt at all.
According to the last report by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, complaints against police officers increased between 1997 and 98 by 20%. But Reverend Betty thinks the community can turn that trend upside down by replacing criticism with encouragement.
And I want them to know that this gray-headed little old lady loves them, and we're trying to bring them closer to the community, and it is beginning to work in Harlem, believe it or not.
In Harlem, Gabrielle Middaugh, Columbia News Tonight.